Bandeyam Shri Guru Shri Yatha Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganar Gunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Paran Sahagana Lalita Shivishakam Vitam Scha Om Ajnana Timarandasya Ganajana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Gurva Bistam Supurakam Garganara Sesha Sambhushitam Chintya Chintya Samasta Veda Nipunam Shri Rupa Patanugam Govinda Abhidam Ujwalam Varatanum Bhaktyan Vidam Sundaram Mande Vishwa Gurunsha Divyat Bhagavat Prem Noi Bijapradam Devam Divyatanum Suchandavaranam Balarka Chelan Sandrananda Puram Sadekavaranam Vairagya Vidyamburim Sri Siddhanta Nidim Subhakti Lasitam Saraswatanam Baram Bandetam Shubharam Madeka Sharanam Yashishwara Shridaram Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavenibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Namo Mahavaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratavishe Namah. So we're hearing from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, translation and commentary by Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupad. This is Antya-lila, chapter 20, the Shikshastaka prayers. We'll start with verse number 63. Ematama Prabhu Bhavavishtahaya Pralapa Korila Tatat Shloka Pariya. Thus overwhelmed by ecstatic love, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spoke like a madman and recited suitable verses. Purve Ashta Shloka Kori Loke Shikadila Se Ashta Shloka Arta Apane Ashwadila. The Lord had formerly composed these 8 verses to teach people in general. Now he personally tasted the meaning of the verses, which are called the Shikshastaka. Prabhur Shikshastaka Shloka Jaypade Shune Krishna Prema Bhakti Tara Bhare Dine Dine. If anyone recites or hears these 8 verses of instruction by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his ecstatic love and devotion for Krishna increased day by day. Jajapiya Prabhu Koti Samudra Gambhir Nanabhava Chandradoye Hoyena Astir. Although Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is as deep and grave as millions of oceans, when the moon of his various emotions rises, he becomes restless. Jai Jai Shloka Jayadev Bhagavate Raya-nataka Jai Ara-karnamrita Se Bhave Shloka Koriya Patane Se Bhava Veshe Korana Ashwadane. When Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu read the verses of Jayadev Goswami's Gita-Govinda or Srimad Bhagavatam, of Ramananda Raya's drama Jagannath-vallabha-nataka, and of Bilvamangal Thakur's Krishna-karnamrita, he was overwhelmed by the various ecstatic emotions of those verses. Thus he tasted their purports. Dwarasha Batsara Aiche Dasharatridine Krishna Rasa Ashwadaye Dui Bandhusane. For 12 years, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu remained in that state day and night. With his 2 friends, he tasted the meaning of those verses, which consist of nothing but the transcendental bliss and mellows of Krishna consciousness. Krishna Rasa Ashwadaye. So he's tasting he's having the taste of Krishna Ras. Se sab lila rasa apane ananta sahasravarane varni nahi pana anta. Even Anantadev, who has thousands of faces, could not reach the end of describing the transcendental bliss of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. Jiva kudra buddhi kon taha parne barnite tara ekana sparshi apana shodite. How then could an ordinary living being, an ordinary jiva, with very little intelligence describe such pastimes? Nevertheless, I am trying to touch but a particle of them just to purify myself. Jata cheshta jata pralap nahi parabar se sab varnite granta hoy shubishtar. There is no limit to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's activities and his words of madness. Therefore, describing them all would greatly increase the size of this book. Vrindavanadash pratame jay lila varnila se sab lilara ami sutra matra koila. Whatever pastime Srila Vrindavandas Thakur has first described, I have merely summarized. Taratyakta abase sankepi kohila lilara bahuye granta tatapi varila. I have only very briefly described the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, not described by Vrindavandas Thakur. Nevertheless, because those transcendental pastimes are so numerous, the size of this book has increased. Ateva se sab lila na pari varnibare samapti korilun lila ke kore namaskare. It is impossible to describe all the pastimes elaborately. I shall therefore end this description and offer them my respectful obeisances. Jai Kichu Kohilun E Digdarshan E Anusare Habe Tara Ashwaran. What I have described gives merely an indication, but by following this indication one may obtain a taste of all the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Prabhur Gambira Lila Na Pari Bhujite Buddhi Praveshanahi Tatena Parivarnite. I cannot understand the very deep, meaningful pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. My intelligence cannot penetrate them, and therefore I could not properly describe them. Sabshrota Vaishnavera Bandiya Charan Chaitanya Charitra Varnan Koilun Samapan. After offering my respectful obeisances to the lotus feet of all my Vaishnav readers, I shall therefore end this description of the characteristics of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Akashananda Tate Jaiche Pakigan Jarajata Shakti Tata Kore Arohan. The sky is unlimited, but many birds fly higher and higher according to their own abilities. Achima Prabhu or Lila Nahi or Par Jivahaya Keva Samyak Paribarni Bar. The pastimes of Mahaprabhu are like the unlimited sky. How then can an ordinary living being describe them all? Jabat Bandir Gati Tateka Varnilun Samudrera Madhyajena Ek Kana Chunilun. I have tried to describe them as far as my intelligence allows, as if trying to touch a drop in the midst of a great ocean. Nityananda Kripa Patra Brindavanadas Chaitanya-lila Teho Hoyana Adibas. Vrindavan Thakur is Lord Nityananda's favorite devotee, and therefore he is the original Vyasadeva in describing the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur says that all writers after Vrindavan Thakur who are pure devotees of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who have tried to describe the Lord's activities are to be considered like Vyas. Srila Vrindavan Thakur is the original Vyasadeva in describing Chaitanya-lila and all others who follow in his footsteps. By describing Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes are also to be called Vyasadeva. The bona fide spiritual master is called Vyas because he is representative of Vyasa. Worshipping the birthday of such a spiritual master is called Vyas Puja. Tara age jajapi sab lilara bandar tatapi alpa varniya chadi lena ar. Although Vrindavan Thakur has written although Vrindavan Thakur has within his jurisdiction the full store of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes, he has left aside most of them and described but a small portion. Jaikachu Varnilun Seho Sankepa Korea Likitena Parantabu Rocky Jachan Likia. What I have described was left aside by Vrindavan Thakur, but although he could not describe these pastimes, he gave us a synopsis. Chaitanya Mangale Teho Likiyad Stani Stane Seva Shuna Se Parama Pramane. In his book named Chaitanya Mangal, which later became Chaitanya Bhagavad, he has described these pastimes in many places. I request my readers to hear that book, for that is the best evidence. Sankepi Kohilun Vishtar Najai Katane Vistariya Veda Vyasa Koriva Varnane. I have described the pastimes very briefly, for it is impossible for me to describe them in full. In the future, however, Vyasadeva will describe them elaborately. Chaitanya Mangale Ihal Likija Stani Stane Satya Kohen Age Vyasa Koriba Varnane. In the Chaitanya Mangal, Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur has stated in many places the factual truth that in the future Vyasadeva will describe the Lord's pastimes elaborately. The statement Age Vyasa Koriba Varnane is similar to a text in the Chaitanya Bhagavat in which Vrindavan Das Thakur says, Seshakande Chaitanyera Ananta Vilas Vistariya Varnite Achan Veda Vyas. The unlimited pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will be described by Vyasadeva in the future. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that these statements indicate in the future other representatives of Vyasadeva will elaborately describe Lord Chaitanya's pastimes. The purport is that any pure devotee in the disciplic succession who describes the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is confirmed to be a representative of Vyasadeva. And Srila Govinda Maharaj, he describes that Vrindavan Das Thakur is the original Veda Vyas, but he said in the future Veda Vyas will come to more elaborately describe the pastimes of Mahaprabhu, and then Srila Govinda Maharaj says, so that is an indication that Krishnadas Kaviraj is also that Vyas who will come and describe the pastimes of Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya-lila-amrita Sindhu Dugdabdi Shaman Krishna Rupa Jaribari Teho Koilapan Chaitanya-lila-amrita Sindhu Dugdabdi Saman Krishna Nurupa Jaribari Teho Koilapan. The ocean of nectarian pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is like the ocean of milk. According to his thirst, Vrindavan Das Thakur filled his pitcher and drank from that ocean. Tarajare Sheshamrita Kichu Moradila Tateke Marila Peta Krishna Moragila. Whatever remnants of milk Vrindavan Das Thakur has given me are sufficient to fill my belly. Now my thirst is completely satiated. Ami ati kudra jiva Baki rangatuni se jai che trishnaya piye samudra pani tachiami ekan chunilun lilar edrishtante janiya prabhur lilara vistar. I am a very insignificant living being, like a small red-beaked bird. Just as such a bird drinks the water of the sea to quench its thirst, so I have touched only a drop of the ocean of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. From this example, you may all understand how expansive are the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Ami liki eho mitya kore anuman amara sharira kashta putali saman. I infer that I have written is a false understanding, for my body is like a wooden doll. Rida Jaratura Ami Anda Bandir Hastahale Mano Budi Nahi Morastir. I am old and troubled by invalidity. I am almost blind and deaf. My hands tremble, and my mind and intelligence are unsteady. Nanaroga Grashta Chalite Vashitena Pari Pancharoga Pira Vyakula Ratri Dine Mari. I am infected with so many diseases that I can neither properly walk nor properly sit. Indeed, I am always exhausted by 5 kinds of diseases. I may die at any time of the day or night. Purve grande iha korijachi nivedan tatapi likiye shuna ihara karan. I have previously given an account of my inabilities. Please hear the reason why I nevertheless still write. Sri Govinda, Sri Chaitanya, Sri Nityananda, Sri Advaita, Sri Bhakta Ara, Sri Stotri Brinda, Sri Swarup, Sri Rupa, Sri Sanatan, Sri Raghunath Das, Sri Guru, Sri Jiva Charan, Iha Savar Charana Kripaya, Lekaya, Amare, Ara Ek Hoy, Teho Ati Kripa Kore. I'm writing this book by the mercy of the lotus feet of Sri Govinda Dev, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Nityananda, Advaitacharya, other devotees, and the readers of this book, as well as Swarup Damodar Goswami, Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatan Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, who is my spiritual master, and Sri Jiva Goswami. I have also been specifically favored by another Supreme Personality. He's writing the book also under dictation of Sri Govinda, Rupa Goswami's deities. Sri Madan Gopal More Lekaya Agyakori Kahitena Jujait Tabu Rohitena Pari. I've also been specifically favored by another Supreme Personality. Sri Madan Mohan, deity of Vrindavan, has given the order that is making me write. Although this should not be disclosed, I disclose it because I am unable to remain silent. Na kohile hoy mor kritagnata dosh damba kori boli shrota na koriya rosh. If I did not disclose this fact, I would be guilty of ingratitude to the Lord. Therefore, my dear readers, please do not consider me too proud and be angry at me. Thomas Sabar, Chanana Duli, Korinu Bandan, Tate Chaitanya-lila, Hoila, Jekachulikan. It is because I have offered my prayers unto the lotus feet of all of you that whatever I have written about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has been possible. Ebe Antya-lila Ganer Kore Anuvad Koile Pai Lila Ashram. Now let me repeat all the pastimes of the Antya-lila, for if I do so, I shall taste the pastimes again. Pratama Parichede Rupera Dvitiya Milan Taramadye Duinata Kera Vindana Shravan Pratama Parichede Rupera Dvitiya Milan Taramadye Duinata Natakera Vidhana Shravan. The first chapter describes how Rupa Goswami met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for the second time and how the Lord heard his 2 dramas, Vidagdha Madhava and Lalita Madhava. Taramadye Shivananda Sange Kurkuraila Prabhu Tare Krishna Kahana Mukta Korila. That chapter also describes the incident of Shivananda Sen's dog, who was induced by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to chant the holy name of Krishna and was thus liberated. Dvatiya Chota Haridas Koraila Shikan Taramadye Shivanander Ascharya Darshan. The second chapter tells how the Lord instructively punished Chota Haridas, Junior Haridas. Also in that chapter is a description of the wonderful vision of Shivananda Sen. Tritiye Haridaser Mahima Prachanda Damodar Pandit Koila Prabhare Bhaktivedanta. In the third chapter is a description of the forceful glories of Haridas Thakur. That chapter also mentions how Damodar Pandit spoke words of criticism to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Prabhu Namadiya Koila Brahmanda Mochan Haridas Korila Namer Mahimastapan. The third chapter also tells how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu delivered everyone by bestowing upon the universe the holy name of the Lord, and it describes how Haridas Thakur established the glories of the holy name by his practical example. Chaturte Shri Sanataner Dvatiya Milan Dehotyaga Hoite Tara Korila Rakan. The fourth chapter describes Sanatana Goswami's second visit with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and how the Lord saved him from committing suicide. Jaishtama Ser Dupetare Koila Parikan Shakti Sancharya Puna Pataila Brindavan. The fourth chapter also tells how Sanatana Goswami was tested in the sunshine of Jaishta, May, June, and was then empowered and sent back to Vrindavan. Panchame Pradyumna Mishre Prabhu Kripa Korila Rai Dwara Krishna Kata Tarishunaila. The fifth chapter tells how the Lord showed his favor to Pradyumna Mishra and made him hear topics of Krishna from Ramananda Raya. Taramaje Bangala Kabir Nataka Upekan Swarup Gosai Koila Vigrahera Mahima Stapan. That chapter also describes how Swarup Damodar Goswami rejected the drama of a poet from Bengal and established the glories of the deity. Shaste Raghunatha Das Prabhure Milila Nityananda Agyaya Chira Mahotsava Koila. The sixth chapter describes how Raghunath Das Goswami met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and performed the Chip Rice Festival in accordance with Nityananda Prabhu's order. So Chip Rice Festival refers to the Chiradoi Mahotsav. It says, translates Chira as chip rice, but it's more like rice flakes soaked in either in yogurt or milk. But that festival was made by Raghunath Das Goswami for Nityananda Prabhu and his followers. Damodar Swarup Thai Tare Samarpila Govardhana Shila Gunja Mala Taridila. And on the calendar, that festival just happened a few days ago. Damodar Swarup Thai Tare Samarpila Govardhana Shila Gunja Mala Taridila. That chapter also tells how the Lord entrusted Raghunath Das Goswami to the care of Swarup Damodar Goswami and gave Raghunath Das the gift of a stone from Govardhan Hill and a garland of Gunjamala. Gunjamala, they're like small beans or berries. Saptama Parichede Vallabha-nataka Milan Nanamate Koilatara Garva Kandan. The seventh chapter tells how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu met Vallabha and dismantled his false pride in various ways. Ashtame Ramachandra Purir Agaman Tarabaye Koila Prabhu Bika Sankochan. The eighth chapter describes the arrival of Ramachandra Puri and how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu minimized his eating due to fear of him. Navame Gopinatha Patanaya Mochan Trijagat Teralok Prabhur Pailadarshan. In the ninth chapter is a description of how Gopinath Patanayaka was delivered and how the people of the three worlds were able to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Dashame Kohilon Bhaktadatta Ashwadan Raghava Panditer Tahan Jalira Sajan. In the 10th chapter, I've described how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu tasted the food given by his devotees. And I have also described the assortment of prasadam in the bags of Raghava Pandit. Taramadye Govindera Koila Parikan, Taramadye Parimunda Nrityara Varnan. Also in that chapter is a description of how the Lord examined Govinda and how he danced in the temple. Ekadashe Haridas Thakur Niyan Bhaktavatsalya Jahan Dekaila Gora Bhagavan. The 11th chapter describes the disappearance of Haridas Thakur and how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, showed his affection for his devotees. Dwareshe Jagannath Taila Banjan Nityananda Koila Shivanandere Taran. In the 12th chapter are descriptions of how Jagannath Pandit broke a pot of oil and how Lord Nityananda chastised Shivananda's sin. Trayodase Jagannath Mathura Jai Aila Mahaprabhu Devadashir Gita-Govinda. The 13th chapter tells how Jagannath Pandit went to Mathura and returned, and how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by chance heard a song sung by a Devadasi dancing girl. Raghunath Bhattacharya Tathai Milan Prabhutare Kripa Kori Pataila Brindavan. Raghunatha Bhattacharya Tahai Milan Prabhutare Kripa Kori Pataila Brindavan. Also in the 13th chapter is an account of how Raghunath Bhatta met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who by his causeless mercy sent him to Vrindavan. Chaturdase Divyanmara Aramba Varnan Shariraheta Prabhur Mana Gela Brindavan. The 14th chapter describes the beginning of the Lord's spiritual trance, in which his body was at Jagannath Puri, but his mind was in Vrindavan. Taramadye Prabhur Sima Dware Patan Asti Sandhi Tyaga Anubhavera Udgam. Also in that chapter is a description of how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu fell down in front of the Simadwara gate of the Jagannath temple. His bones separated at the joints, and how various transcendental symptoms awakened in him. Chatak Parvata Deki Prabhura Daban Taramadye Prabhur Kichu Pralapa Varnan. Also in that chapter is a description of how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ran toward Chatak Parvat and spoke like a madman. Panchadasa Parichede Udyana Vilase Vrindavana Brahme Jahan Korila Praveshe. In the 15th chapter is a description of how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu entered a garden on the seashore and mistook it for Vrindavan. Taramadye Prabhur Panchendriya Akarshan Taram Madhye Korila Rase Krishna Anveshan. Also in that chapter is a description of the attraction of Lord Chaitanya's 5 senses to Krishna and how he searched for Krishna in the rasa dance. Shodashe Kalidase Prabhu Kripa Korila Vaishnavo Chishta Kaivara Phala Dekaila. The 16th chapter tells how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed his mercy to Kalidas and thus demonstrated the results of eating the remnants of the food of Vaishnavas. Shivanandar Balake Shloka Koraila Simadware Dwari Prabhure Krishna Dekaila. It also describes how Shivananda's son composed a verse and how the doorkeeper of the Simadwar showed Krishna to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mahaprashader Tahan Mahima Varnila Krishna Dharamritera Phala Shloka Ashwarila. Also in that chapter, the glories of Mahaprasadam are explained, and a verse is tasted describing the effect of nectar from the lips of Krishna. Saptadashe Gabi Madhye Prabhur Patan Kormakara Anubhavir Tahai Udgam. The 17th chapter recounts how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu fell among the cows and assumed the form of a tortoise as his ecstatic emotions awakened. Krishnera Shabdagune Prabhur Mana Karshila Kastri Angate Shlokera Arta Aveshi Korila. That chapter also tells how the attributes of Krishna's sound attracted the mind of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who then described in ecstasy the meaning of the Kastri Angate verse. Bhava Sabaye Puna Koila Pralapan Karnamrita Shloker Arta Koila Bivaran. The 17th chapter also tells how Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, due to the conjunction of various ecstatic emotions, again began speaking like a madman and described in detail the meaning of a verse from the Krishna-karnamrita. Ashtadasha Parichede Samudre Patan Krishna Gopi Jalakeli Tahandarshan. In the 18th chapter is an account of how the Lord fell into the ocean and in ecstasy saw in a dream the pastimes of a water fight between Krishna and the gopis. Tahai Dekila Krishna Vanya Bhojan Jaliya Utaila Prabhu Aila Shwabhavan. In that dream, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw Krishna's picnic in the forest. As Lord Chaitanya floated in the sea, a fisherman caught him, and then the Lord returned to his own residence. All this is recounted in the 18th chapter. Unabimshe Bidye Prabhur Mugga Sangarshan Krishnara Viraha Svorte Pralapa Varnan. In the 19th chapter is a description of how Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu rubbed his face against the walls and spoke like a madman because of separation from Krishna. So that's the 19th chapter. We're in the 20th chapter. Vashanta Rajanite Pushpodhyane Viharan Krishnara Saurabhya Shlokar Arta Vivaran. That chapter also describes Krishna's wandering in a garden on a spring night, and it fully describes the meaning of a verse about the scent of Krishna's body. Vimsha Parichede Nija Shikshastaka Pariya Tara Arta Ashwarila Primavishta Hoya. The 20th chapter tells how Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu recited his own 8 stanzas of instruction and tasted their meaning in ecstatic love. Bhakti Shikaite Jai Shikshastaka Kohila Se Shloka Ashtakara Arta Puna Ashwarila. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu composed those 8 stanzas of Shikshastaka to instruct the devotees, but he also personally tasted their meaning. Mukhya lila arta korilun katan anuvad hoite tare granta vivaran. I have thus repeated the principal pastimes and their meaning, for by such repetition one can remember the descriptions in the book. This is Antya-lila resume. Ek parichedera kata anek ek paricheder kata aneka prakar mukhya kohilun kata najai vishtar. In every chapter there are various topics, but I have repeated only those that are principal, for not all of them could be described again. Sri Radha Saha Sri Madana Mohan, Sri Radha Saha Sri Govinda Charan, Sri Radha Saha Srila Sri Gopinath, 18 Thakur Hoy, Gaudiya Jagannath. The Vrindavan deities of Madan Mohan with Srimati Radharani, Govinda with Srimati Radharani, and Gopinath with Srimati Radharani are the life and soul of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, or Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan, Shri Shri Radha Govinda, and Shri Shri Radha Gopinath. Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Shri Juta Nityananda, Shri Advaita Charya, Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Shri Swarup, Shri Rupa, Shri Sanatan, Shri Guru, Shri Raghunatha, Shri Jiva Charan, Nija Shire Dori E, Sabara Charan, Ja Hoite Hoy Sab, Manshita Puran. So that my desires may be fulfilled, I place the lotus feet of these personalities on my head. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with Sri Nityananda Prabhu, Sri Advaita Charya and their devotees, as well as Sri Swarup Damodar Goswami, Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatan Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, and Srila Jiva Goswami. Srila Raghunath Das Goswami was the instructing spiritual master of Krishnadas Kaviraj and has therefore been described as Sri Guru. So that my desires may be fulfilled, I place the lotus feet of these personalities on my head, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with Lord Nityananda, Advaita Charya and their devotees, as well as Sri Swarup Damodar Goswami, Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Sanatan Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, who is my spiritual master, and Srila Jiva Goswami. Sabar Chanana Kripa Guru Upadhyayi Morabane Sishyatare Bahutanachai. The mercy of their lotus feet is my spiritual master, and my words are my disciples, whom I have made dance in various ways. The mercy of their lotus feet is my spiritual master, and my words are my disciples who have made dance in various ways. Sishyara Shramadeki Guru Nachana Rakila Kripana Nachai Bani Vasya Rohila. Seeing the fatigue of the disciples, the spiritual master has stopped making them dance, and because that mercy no longer makes them dance, my words now sit silently. Very poetical. Said his, so those two verses together. The mercy of their lotus feet is my spiritual master, and my words are my disciples who have made dance in various ways. Seeing the fatigue of the disciples, the spiritual master has stopped making them dance, and because that mercy no longer makes them dance, my words now sit silently. Anipuna Vani Apane Nachite Najane Jata Nachaila Nachi Korila Vishrame. My inexperienced words do not know how to dance by themselves. The mercy of the Guru made them dance as much as possible, and now after dancing they have taken rest. Sab Shrota Ganer Kore Charana Bandhan Jasabar Chanana Kripa Subera Karan. I now worship the lotus feet of all my readers, for by the mercy of their lotus feet there is all good fortune. Chaitanya Charitamrita Jay Jana Shune Tara Chanana Duna Karon Munipane. If one hears the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as described in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, I wash his lotus feet and drink the water. Shrotara Pararenu Karon Mastaka Bhushan Tomare Amrita Pile Safala Hoila Shram. I decorate my head with the dust of the lotus feet of my audience. Now you have all drunk this nectar, and therefore my labor is successful. Shri Rupa Raghunath Parijara As Chaitanya Charitamrita Kohe Krishnadas. Praying at the lotus feet of Shri Rupa and Shri Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishnadas, narrate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, following in their footsteps. Charitam Amritam Etat Srila Chaitanya Vishnu Shubhadam Ashubhanashi Shradaya Svarayedyaha Tad Amala Parapadme Bringatam Etyasoyam Rasayati Rasam Uchai Prema Madhbika Puram. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is filled with the activities of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. It invokes all good fortune and destroys everything inauspicious. If one tastes the nectar of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita with faith and love, I become like a bumblebee, tasting the honey of transcendental love from his lotus feet. Shriman Madana Gopal Govinda Deva Tushtaile. Shriman Madana Gopal Govinda Deva Tushtaye Chaitanya Arpitam Ashtvetach Chaitanya Charitamritam. Since this book, Chaitanya Charitamrita, is now complete, having been written for the satisfaction of the most opulent deities, Madan Mohanji and Govindaji, let it be offered at the lotus feet of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Dev. Parimala Vashita Bhuvanam Sva Rason Madita Rasagya Rolambam Giridhara Charanam Bojam Kakalu Rasika Samihate Hatum. Realized devotees are like bumblebees maddened by their own mellows at Krishna's lotus feet. The scent of those lotus feet perfumes the entire world. Who is the realized soul that could give them up? Sake Sin Vagni Vaninendo Jaishte Vrindavan Hantare Suryate Sita Panchamyam Grantoyam Purnatam Gataha. In Vrindavan in the year 1537, Shakabda era, AD 1615, in the month of Jaishtam, May-June, on Sunday, the 5th day of the waning moon, this Chaitanya Charitamrita has been completed. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Antya-lila, 20th chapter, describing the meaning of the Shikshastaka and how the Lord tasted in himself. End of the Antya-lila. And let's see. This book was completed on a Sunday. There, 6:15. There are about four pages of concluding words. You have time to finish them? Yeah. Today, Sunday, November 10th, 1974, corresponding to the 10th of Kartik, Chaitanya era 488, the 11th day of the dark fortnight, the Ram Ekadashi. We have now finished the English translation of Sri Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita in accordance with the authorized order of His Divine Grace Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj, my beloved, eternal, spiritual master, guide, and friend. Although, according to material vision, His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada passed away from this material world on the last day of December 1936, I still consider His Divine Grace to be always present with me by His Vani, His words. There are two ways of association, by Vani and by Vapu. Vani means words and Vapu means physical presence. Physical presence is sometimes appreciable and sometimes not, but Vani continues to exist eternally. Therefore, we must take advantage of the Vani, not the physical presence. The Bhagavad Gita, for example, is the Vani of Lord Krishna. Although Krishna was personally present 5,000 years ago and is no longer physically present from the materialistic point of view, the Bhagavad Gita continues. In this connection, we may call to memory the time when I was fortunate enough to meet His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, sometime in the year 1922. Srila Prabhupada had come to Calcutta from Sri Mayapur to start the missionary activities of the Gaudiya Math. He was sitting in a house at Ultadanga when, through the inducement of an intimate friend, the late Sriman Narendranath Malik, I had the opportunity to meet His Divine Grace for the first time. I do not remember the actual date of the meeting, but at that time it was one of the managers of Dr. Bose's laboratory in Calcutta. I was a newly married young man addicted to Gandhi's movement and dressed in khadi. Fortunately, even at our first meeting, His Divine Grace advised me to preach the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in English in the Western countries. Because at that time I was a complete nationalist, a follower of Mahatma Gandhi's, I submitted to His Divine Grace that unless our country were freed from foreign subjugation, no one would hear the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu seriously. Of course, we had some argument on this subject, but at last I was defeated and convinced that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's message is the only panacea for suffering humanity. I was also convinced that the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was then in the hands of a very expert devotee, and that surely the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would spread all over the world. I could not, however, immediately take up his instructions to preach, but I took his words very seriously and was always thinking of how to execute his order, although I was quite unfit to do so. In this way, I passed my life as a householder until 1950, when I retired from family life as a vanaprastha. With no companion, I loitered here and there until 1958, when I took sannyas. Then I was completely ready to discharge the order of my spiritual master. Previously, in 1936, just before His Divine Grace passed away at Jagannath-puri, I wrote him a letter asking what I could do to serve him. In reply, he wrote me a letter dated 13 December 1936, ordering me in the same way to preach in English the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as I had heard it from him. After he passed away, I started the fortnightly magazine Back to Godhead sometime in 1944 and tried to spread the cult of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu through this magazine. After I took sannyas, a well-wishing friend suggested that I write books instead of magazines. Magazines, he said, might be thrown away, but books remain perpetually. Then I attempted to write Srimad Bhagavatam. Before that, when I was a householder, I had written on Srimad Bhagavad Gita and had completed about 1,100 pages, but somehow or other the manuscript was stolen. In any case, when I had published Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto in 3 volumes in India, I thought of going to the USA. By the mercy of His Divine Grace, I was able to come to New York on September 17, 1965. Since then, I have translated many books, including Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya Summary, and many others. In the meantime, I was induced to translate Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita and publish it in an elaborate version. In his leisure time in later life, His Divine Grace Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would simply read Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. It was his favorite book. He used to say that there would be a time when foreigners would learn the Bengali language to read the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The work on this translation began about 18 months ago. Now, by the grace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and His Divine Grace, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is finished. In this connection, I have to thank my American disciples, especially Shriman Pradyumna Dasarikari, Shriman Nitai Dasarikari, Shriman Jayadvaita Das Brahmachari, and many other boys and girls who are sincerely helping me in writing, editing, and publishing all these literatures. also previously mentioned was Chidananda Prabhu, who became Siddhanta Maharaj. I think that His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur is always seeing my activities and guiding me within my heart by his words. As it is said in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Tane Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye, spiritual inspiration comes from within the heart, wherein the Supreme Personality of God in His Paramatma feature is always sitting with all His devotees and associates. It is to be admitted that whatever translation work I have done is through the inspiration of my spiritual master, because personally I am most insignificant and incompetent to do this materially impossible work. I do not think myself a very learned scholar, but I have full faith in the service of my spiritual master's divine grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. If there is any credit to my activities of translating, it is all due to His divine grace. Certainly, if His divine grace were physically present at this time, it would have been a great occasion for jubilation. But even though He is not physically present, I am confident that He is very much pleased by this work of translation. He was very fond of seeing many books published to spread the Krishna consciousness movement. Therefore, our society, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, has been formed to execute the order of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. It is my wish that devotees of Lord Chaitanya all over the world enjoy this translation, and I'm glad to express my gratitude to the learned men in the Western countries who are so pleased with my work that they are ordering in advance all my books that will be published in the future. On this occasion, therefore, I request my disciples who are determined to help me in this work to continue their cooperation fully, so that philosophers, scholars, religionists, and people in general all over the world will benefit by reading our transcendental literature such as Srimad Bhagavatam and Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, dated November 10, 1974, at the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, Hare Krishna Land, Juhu, Bombay. Okay, so that's the end of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Now we finished it. I even read the concluding words. So then Monday, I'll start with the Adi-lila. Verse Adi-lila, chapter 1, verse 1. I'll start again. Okay? So now we'll sing Hari Harai. Okay. Should I turn this? Should I turn this mic off for a minute, I guess? Push. All right, there. Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Jadavaya Nama Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinatha Mananama Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktivedanta Sri Chaitanya Nityananda Sri Advaita Chandra Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktivedanta Jai Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raguna Sri Jiva Janame more Amila. Hey Jai Gosai Kabi Braje Koilama. Radha Krishna Antya-lila Korila Bhaka. Anande Bolo Hari Bhaja Vrindavan. Shri Guru Vaishnava Pade Majayaman. Shri Guru Vaishnava Padma Goriya. Hare Nam Sankirtana Kohe Narakamura. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Nitai Gora Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo. Nitai Gora Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo. Jai Saparikara Shri Guru Guranga Gandharvika Giridhari Joki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Tilak Neri Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Nirmalacharya Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtatara Sadashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Ashtatara Sadashi Shimad Srila Bhakti Rakak Sri Radev Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Bhagavan Srila Bhakti Sananta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Gaur Kishordas Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Srila Satchidananda Bhaktivedanta Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Srila Jagannath-das Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai. Rupanuga Guru Bharga Ki Jai. Namachari Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Jiva Gopal Bhatta Dasha Raghunath Shad Goswami Prabhu Ki Jai. Prem Se Go Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami Prabhu ki jai, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai, Vishvavarenya Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupad ki jai, Srila Vrindavan Thakur ki jai, Sri Chaitanya Bhagavad ki jai, Jayam Vishnupad Srila Bhakti Kusham Ashram Maharaj ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Sri Navadip Dham ki jai, Sri Ramayapur ki jai, Saparshada Sri Nityananda Prabhu ki jai, Saparshada Sriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Sri Koladev ki jai, Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Mat ki jai, Soquel Sri Chaitanya Saraswat Seva Ashram ki jai, Ganga Devi ki jai, Tulasi Maharani ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Sri Vrindavan Dham ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopi Govardhan Shyam Kan Radha Kunda Kalindi Yamuna Jo ki jai, Shri Purushottam Adam ki jai, Baladev Subhadra Jagannath Jo ki jai, Bhakti Vigna Vinashaya, Shri Nrsinga Dev ki jai, Bhakta Prabhara Shri Prahlad Maharaj ki jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, all the assembled devotees ki jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.